All
Hi.
right.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right. Welcome, everybody, to Turning the Key, episode one, with myself, Patrick, and my co host here, Sean. And today we're going to be talking about hexagrams 29 and 30. Hexagrams 29 and 30 and the gene keys are the keys of devotion and rapture, and they're a pair. So every week we're going to be speaking about a pair of keys that we're connecting with at the moment, and we're going to talk for an hour and have a good time. So,
Perfect.
yeah, I feel like I'll just start out by saying that these hexagrams they mean a lot to me.
Mhm.
They I have them in really pronounced positions in my chart. I have Rapture in my radiance in my gene keys chart, so it's deeply connected to my sense of well-being and just my sense of vitality, my auric strength of moving through the world and just feeling like light. Or it also has the shadow component of what drains me and makes me feel kind of like a wilting plant. And devotion, it's my rock, it's my base, it's my purpose, it's the base of my chart, and it's really the pillar that has fueled me during it's been the only pillar that's held me during the most dramatic, dark night of the soul oriented events in my life. So I feel like I have a lot to say about these keys, and they mean a lot to me. So I'm happy that we're talking about them today.
Yeah. They're also in my chart. I know devotion is my attraction.
Your mic just got quiet, by the way.
Did it. And how's that now?
That's a lot better. Yeah,
Feels better. Okay.
yeah. Stay closer to the camera, because otherwise it's
Cool. Yeah, they're also in my chart. I know that devotion is my attraction. I think rapture is either my EQ or my vocation even. So
hmm
yeah, and just from a kind of Chinese medicine, Taoist cosmology perspective, it's fire and water. So it's
hmm
this core piece of alchemy that plays out in the planet, in the universe, but in our bodies most importantly. So
yeah,
they're good ones. They're really
yeah,
good ones.
yeah. Yeah, I feel like I'd love to hear you start us off by just speaking into the trigrams, because I feel like it's the building blocks of this code to just talk into the trigrams and what we're working with when we look at the hexagrams and the split of them into the trigrams. So I've even got a whiteboard here, we can work
Oh,
with,
amazing. Okay.
but uh, but if you want to speak into them.
Yeah, I mean, starting with 29 is double water. So water is a yin line, and then in the middle is a yang line with another yin line on top.
hmm
So the yin is the form, and the yang is the energy or the consciousness. And so it's a picture of a river with the two yin banks with the
hmm
water rushing in between.
hmm
And so it's double water, water over water.
hmm
Whereas fire is the opposite. It's two yang lines on top and on bottom, and then in the middle there's a yin line. And so that represents how fire is this dynamic, yang expanding energy, but it doesn't have a center. Its center is empty.
Yeah.
And so it needs to cling to something in order to have its expression. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it clings to what it is burning
Yeah.
because in and of itself, it doesn't have its own center because it's exhausting itself. So
hmm
it's whereas heaven and earth, which is heaven is pure yang and earth is pure yin, fire and what which is heaven and earth being this representation of light and dark, of yin and yang. Fire and water, on the other hand, is representing how there is yang within yin and yin within yang, which is
hmm
really how this expressed 3D, 4D world is playing out. Is that
Interesting.
nothing is just purely yang and nothing is just purely yin. It's always the combination of the two. And so that is the alchemy.
hmm
That's the sacred marriage. That's
hmm
the female and male coming together in order to create and express life.
I've never thought about it that way. I've looked at these hexagrams so many times, but I never thought about them being like the drop of the yin in the yang, or the
Yeah,
drop of the yang in the yin.
right.
And wow, that opens up so much. around why, yeah, just my whole sense of relating with them because devotion, the abyss, we're working with devotion 29, the abyss that has the yang in between the two yin.
Hmm.
And there's with the banks of the yin holding that trigram, devotion, the shadow of half-heartedness, the gift of commitment, the city of devotion. For me, its whole entire journey is about just getting laser clear around where you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out of different
Hmm.
things in your life. And we'll look at the things that are the most on the surface, like big things like our jobs or relationships. Those would be the the ripe spaces to look at across our lives to see, where am I kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And what happens when we do that is we're splitting our spirit, where half of us has said yes to something and half of us has said no to it. And so we're kind of living two lives. We're living a life where we are engaged and we're part of something, and we're living a life where we don't want to be part of that thing. And there's a wrestling that happens in that space, and over time it drains our life force. It's literally that half-heartedness. It's like moving around, like you have half a lung, half a heart, half a just energy within yourself to meet whatever's there in front of you. And so commitment is this journey. That gift is about getting really clear about your 100% yeses and your 100%
Hmm.
nos. And over time, that's going to start to till the soil across your life around who may be a part of it, what opportunities you're engaged in. And I always like to tell people when they're working with devotion, it's like start with the things that are the most inconsequential things in your life. Like somebody invites you to dinner and you don't really want to go, but you say yes anyway. And then the whole time that you're there, you're kind of feeling like, "Oh, I really just wanted to be home and stay home today." And so that wrestling, it's like part of you is home, part of you is there.
So you're never fully
And
present.
and over time, you're not fully present, and the relationship suffers, and you actually emanate this field throughout your life of attracting opportunities, relationships where life is only meeting you at half level because only half of you is actually there. And because now we're getting to like devotion, where it's like the difference between commitment, where you're getting clear on your 100% yeses, 100% nos, and maybe your life is starting to shift accordingly and clear out certain things that aren't in resonance with you, and relationships may fall away and get you more aligned on the things that do feel like a full yes. Devotion starts to take to that next level where it's like I'm fully surrendering my entire life into the object of my devotion. But to look at that trigram, coming back to the first point, looking at that trigram where it's like the yin is holding that container, and
Yeah.
yin, such deep surrender, is holding the space for you, like the river, the masculine yang line in between those two yin lines, to navigate that river. And I think that
Right.
that's just so poetic and beautiful,
Yeah.
because I've
Like,
always felt in my connection with that key, in the way that I've related with it, it's felt like this kind of blanketing of that yin energy of life, welcoming me to surrender. And there I am, kind of walking that path
hmm.
in within that vessel.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love your comment on like yeses and nos and how that is really guiding us like through the river of life, you know.
Hmm.
And a lot of people equate sometimes this journey as a hiking up a mountain to getting to the mountaintop.
Hmm.
But equally so for me, it's also navigating this river that is taking you back to the ocean. And so
Yeah.
the idea of water over water of devotion is to be like water, is that we're always seeking the ocean. We're always seeking back to wholeness, to
Mm.
rejoin with a sense of unity. And in the traditional I Ching, water over water is a sign of danger. When you would get water over water, it's like caution,
Hmm.
look around you, see what you're navigating. But underneath that is this is this kind of spark of hope to say that no matter how dark it gets, if you can hold your inner sincerity, then you're going to navigate it with skill.
Hmm.
And the space of half-heartedness of when we want to get into something, but we meet up with our fear. We meet up with this sense that holds us back. And that is actually this felt experience. And water in this context in the I Ching can also represent the moon. So it's water over water, but it's also the moon over the moon, which is the subconscious and then even the unconscious. So
Hmm.
these programs that we have, like that are fed into our being through our mind, but actually held in our soma. And we're 70% water, just like this planet. And so our water is organized in our body through these two-dimensional sheets that lay down and sandwich our protein molecules that create our fascia, our connective tissue, hold the organs in place, hold the space around the cells, and even penetrate into the cellular matrix, getting all the way into the DNA envelope. So our crystalline structure is holding us in place, but also working like quite literally with the gene keys, you know what I
Hmm.
mean, at a DNA level. And one thing for me that I feel our culture at this point has been a little lopsided or a little off the mark is that we really want to think and understand and prove things to be true before we call them truth. But truly, our truth resides within us. We have an inner knowing, we have an inner truth. And that is a felt experience. And that is a communication directly from our soul. And when we have this felt experience, then the mind comes in and brings the clarity, which is the fire over fire, right? This
Hmm.
conscious awareness. So for me, fire and water, you can't separate these two hexagrams out from each other because they work so well together.
Hmm.
So as we move through life, like literally our crystalline structure starts to resonate and gives us this felt feeling of experience that pulls us or repels us from certain situations. But just like, have you ever seen anything on cymatics?
Oh yeah. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when a certain frequency is hit, then ooblex or different solutions, even sand, that's particular salt water, like the ocean,
Hmm.
will form spontaneous geometric patterns.
Right.
And if you look at the first cellular organisms that formed in the deep oceans, in the water over water of this planet, they look very similar to these cymatic shapes
Mm.
that just spontaneously created. Similarly, the frequency of how we speak creates a structure in our water. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? We were talking about that the last time we spoke, of how these
Hmm.
positive, high vibrational thoughts and feelings create a structure in the water that has a very clean, clear structure to it, whereas a lower frequency creates a very distorted, dissonant kind of quality to the
Hmm.
crystalline structure of your water. And so basically, this spontaneous like shaping of patterns out of the water is really how we create the language in our head. That is the interpretation from our culture. So literally, we get this feeling in our body and we start to move towards it, but then we hit the cultural interpretation or the interpretation from the collective ego.
Hmm.
And that might tell us these different things that the language that's coming out of that vibration is telling us, no, you shouldn't do this, or no, you can't do this, or you're not good enough, or this isn't the right thing for you.
Hmm.
That your truth isn't the right truth because truth is supposed to be something that's been externalized from you.
Mm.
Does that
Mm.
make sense? So
Yeah,
then that
totally.
that half-heartedness comes in because you're called to move towards something, but then all of a sudden the spells that are literally
Yeah.
held within in your water, and so they create obstructions to your inner sense, which
Hmm.
can also be your common sense or even your innocence,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So your innocence, your innocent longing, your innocent desire, which is held within like the other hexagram in 30 with fire over fire, which is rapture of like
Hmm.
being in divine rapture with life.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
your innocence is guiding you into these places, but then you're hitting this cultural interpretation of what should or shouldn't be.
Yeah.
When really your inner truth is even beyond language, right?
Yeah.
Is transcends it. It's just this inner knowing that you need to experience something. And so that's the abyss. when we get into this place of wrestling with what you know and feel to be true, but what everyone else or your parents or your religion or your society is telling you to be true.
Hmm.
And you start to wrestle with it back and forth. And that's
Hmm.
literally can be this bottomless pit. It can be this dark despair. And in it is held all these primal fears, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Of like that literally holds our body in these different places.
Hmm.
Very similar with trauma. Like when we get into this traumatic place that actually physically creates this warping and distortion and adhesion of our crystalline structure in our body. It makes our water not in alignment. You know, that holds a certain frequency that we come up against when we want to express ourselves in a certain way.
Hmm.
Um, you know, chronic emotions create a posture in our body that then again, like
Hmm.
obstruct the water in our body. Repetitive movements, whether they're done out of a job that you hate, or pacing out of worry, or sitting a certain way when you're stressing out and working on at the computer, that all holds our body, the moon, the reflection of the sun in a
Hmm.
certain way. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
all that is you're coming up against all of that, and that's creating this half-heartedness.
Hmm.
You know, like I I hate my job, but I need to make money. So
Right.
you show up
Hmm.
to your job every day, but your heart's not in it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? You don't have that fire. You don't have that rapture. You don't
Hmm.
have that lightness, which is the
Hmm.
gift, right?
Hmm.
So now life becomes heavy, you know?
Yeah. Which is
Yeah.
so interesting. And this was one of the points that maybe it makes sense to just bring in Rapture a little bit, even just for a touch, because, and I want to keep on talking about devotion for a moment here, but commitment has such a cultural stigma of like commitment is heavy,
Right.
commitment is this thing that is going to like, drag you in. And there's the classic jokes, around marriage, like the old
Volunteering.
guard, jokes around marriage and commitment and,
Well, you know,
and
there's three rings to marriage, right?
it's,
The engagement ring, the wedding ring, and then the suffering.
so that's perfect. That's perfect for this
Right.
because that heaviness of commitment, and if that's like a, just a cultural joke, it's like, oh, like to commit myself to something is this like, whew, it's this deep thing. And the actual partner to that with Rapture is lightness, which is
Yeah.
holding this super light touch. And that is the paradox. That's the beauty, the paradox of devotion, rapture, the gifts of commitment and lightness, is how can I bring myself so fully to something when we have so much programming around like, well, if I'm going to pour myself into, think about like everything with school. If I'm going to pour myself into like an MBA program, or if I'm going to pour myself into this job, that it's going to be a thing for a period of time, and that can be true. But the art is holding that light touch that says, I'm committing myself to this thing in this moment because
Mhm.
this is what life is asking for me in this moment.
Yeah.
Just like I'm this canoe riding along the
Right.
bend of this stream,
I love that.
the stream of life's, like the yin container. I'm that yang canoe floating with my presence, my yang presence and awareness along the river of where life yin is, the mystery is taking me. But at any moment another series of rapids may come up.
Right.
My family member could get in a car accident or something like that, or I could have to leave and uproot my home for some reason, and then it's like, okay, life is now asking for me to go over here now. And so, and that's where sometimes when we look at our commitments, it's like, well, we'll either like really hold on and we'll imprison ourselves into this space, even though our life force is just completely drained, like we've spiritually checked out, but like part of us is just gripping on to something, someone, some opportunity, some home. And because of that fear of like, oh, do I have to start again? And then
Right.
this is another heavy thing that I have
Right.
to lean into. But it's actually that dance of saying, okay, like this is what I'm committed to today.
Yeah.
And there's something that needs to be said about the other end of the spectrum of people who just kind of flip through life
Yeah,
and
flip it.
are
Right,
actually think that they're being kind of like in surrender, in flow, but they're actually afraid of commitment. And so they invite those experiences for them in their life to take them out of the thing because they fear true commitment.
right.
So we're
Which yeah, for sure. Which I would imagine would be and in the times that I've been flippant and have shied away from commitment, actually that creates a heaviness, that creates
Mhm,
an aloneness, it
mhm.
creates a deflation, of your boat. And I think what you're talking about with lightness that really spoke to me, especially with the metaphor of being in a canoe on the river, is that lightness is a buoyancy. It's not,
Exactly. That's it.
it's not
Hmm.
necessarily it's fun and easy, although lightness can have that aspect to it. But
Hmm.
when you're in your full commitment to your truth, which has brought you to other people or other circumstances in which now a committed, braiding or marriage is created, and you're in this commitment, even if it's not quote unquote easy, you're still being carried. You're still
Hmm.
being lifted up. You have a lightness that you have a vehicle, and that vehicle is your commitment. You know what I
You
mean?
need that
And
lightness, otherwise the boat's going underwater.
yeah, exactly. And I love how Richard in the Gene Keys talks about like when you see someone that's fully committed to something, it seems like they have the best luck. And
Hmm.
like that really is the universe, showing up. And when you step into your sincerity about what you know to be true for yourself, and you create this commitment, this unshakable commitment to it, the universe responds.
Hmm.
Because really your inner truth is a mirroring of a universal truth that only you in your particular genomic expression of creativity and love can hold and express. So the universe is pushing you into this space for you to realize that and reflect it back to each other. You know what I mean? And so
Hmm.
when you're committed to your truth and you're committed to your path and your vehicle, then the universe becomes committed to you.
Yeah, yeah,
You
and it
know?
doesn't matter. This is the irony of it all is that it doesn't ultimately matter. And I know this well from just my own life experience, is that part of my own constitution around why I've carried heaviness around commitment has been because there's this sense that's like, um, well, if I commit, am I committing to the right thing or the right one? And there's that sort of pause that's like, I want to really make sure that I'm committing to the right one or the right thing. And it's like, what I've learned over the years is that it doesn't matter what you commit yourself to. What matters is the commitment.
Right.
Because life is just going to change the stage, it's going to change the actors, it's just going to serve up whatever it needs to with a different
Right.
set of
Exactly.
actors and costumes on stage for you to do what actually is needed, which is learn the lesson that your soul needs to learn. And so it's like, okay, here's a fork in the road. Trust your heart, but know that whatever path you take, give yourself fully to it because
Yeah.
you will get to the ocean. You will get to where you need to
Right.
get regardless. And it's our own fear, it's our own sense of our ego and our single life mindedness that says, well, I have to make such an important decision around, am I going, left or am I going right? And all of that ends up just taking you away from getting quiet and tuning into your heart in the first place.
Right.
But once
Right.
you feel that little whisper that's saying, hey, go here, and it may seem like the next step is where the mind wants to say, are you sure? The next
Right.
step is where the mind wants to say, what about that thing that is going to happen, or what about that
Exactly.
rock that you might hit?
Right. Which is the
And,
half-heartedness, right?
yeah, yeah, and it's just like I love with the abyss.
Yeah.
And Richard speaks to this where he kind of welcomes this mantra of relating with it. It's like, go gently into the abyss, and the abyss
Hmm.
will treat you gently, not rushing headlong, like preparing yourself with such rigidity, because then you can't actually move the oar to flow with where it wants to take you with that lightness.
Yeah.
So I just think I think it's so beautiful and so important because so much is happening and shifting so rapidly, especially these days on the planet, and that it's to bring that commitment even back to yourself from these externalized objects, this job, this person, this house, this car, whatever it is, and bring it back into how can I commit to myself more
Yeah.
deeply in this moment, and what do I need in this moment, and how can I get really clear
Right.
on that, and know that that's what's going to carry me through this. It's not the person, it's not that, it's not the job, it's not that, it's me that's going to
Right.
carry me through my
Right.
life. And so
Right.
how can I bring myself and train that edge more and more within myself, that I can just truly devote myself to what this moment is calling of me, what my heart is calling of me in this moment, and be tested in that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, how this is where devotion, that commitment, starts to go into devotion. It's like, are you willing to die into
Yeah.
the object of your devotion? And
Right.
this is where these keys, especially devotion, bring such a connection with Eastern traditions, where
Yeah.
there's a more common presence of a guru and a devotee.
Right.
It's less familiar to us here in the West, and especially nowadays has gotten even a little bit distorted around
For
that
sure.
dynamic. But I love, even Richard talks about where people have attained enlightenment by devoting themselves to a false
Oh,
guru,
for sure. Because it's the act of
because it's
devotion.
the quality of their devotion.
Right.
And I think that says it all, is that you can, it's not about what you devote yourself to. It's the quality of your devotion. It's the
For
quality of
sincerity.
how you, and your sincerity of how
Right.
you really navigate and give yourself fully into that abyss, that unknown.
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
so good.
Mhm.
And so much is coming up with like that the imagery of the abyss, the need to go deeper and deeper. And as you go deeper and deeper into the ocean, it gets darker. And like the concentration becomes so intense that you feel like you're going to be crushed. And like that is this primal fear of annihilation. You
Mhm.
can't breathe, you can't, because you can't see, and you're being squished down into this small little space as, literally these atmospheres of water is pushing down on you.
Mhm.
But it's also this space of concentrating your mind into your body and bringing this fire of your thought and this all over the place and bringing it down and concentrating it into your belly, into the ocean, or the centeredness of your soma. And if you go deep enough into the ocean and you go to the floor of the ocean, especially when it's spreading,
Mhm.
it's spreading apart, and then moving up in the middle of that spreading is this plume of hot, mineralized, nutrient-rich vent, a thermal vent coming from the heat or the heart of the earth,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so that is, I mean, that's intercourse. That's a yang and a yin, like literally the
Yeah.
spreading wet yin and then the
Mhm.
hot yang coming
Mhm.
forward. So when you go deep enough into this abyss and you surrender yourself and you trust that you're going to be okay, like
Mhm.
no matter what, then you meet this like incredibly procreative, creative space. And then that brings in the desire from,
Mhm.
the 30th key.
Mhm.
And even though that the desire is described as its shadow, it's such an important piece, I feel, not to run away from, but to really embrace your desire. And for me, it's this space of when we're trying to really center ourselves in our truth, in our heart's truth, we have these desires and they move us into these situations. And they move us into these situations, I feel, in order to break certain adhesions and
Mhm.
break certain like mind traps that we have. And that's where we have to really wrestle with the half-heartedness. Because so, and it's not necessarily fulfilling the desire, but it's trusting that the desire is going to put you in the right place and the right time to get exactly what you need. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
But again, we go back to these spells that are literally written into the tissues of our body. So a very kind of blunt, overt example is like through sex. Like we have this sexual desire, it brings us into this space. And then when that sex is met, all of a sudden we start hitting all these spells and this cultural like language that has been fed into our mind. So let's say through porn. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? So you get into this space, especially as a man, and now instead of just really being with your sexual desire, what does that mean? What does that feel like? Going slow and really feeling what your heart is trying to communicate through you. Now you're getting overrun by this spell that's been programmed into your body through pornography.
Yeah.
And now you become in this performative thing, or you're trying to emulate what you saw, or somehow all this
Hmm.
shame and guilt and stuff is coming in because you don't look or act like you saw the actors look like or acting, or they're not responding to you like it was in the video. And that's all happening in this unconscious somatic place.
Hmm.
And so, like really trusting your desire as a mechanism and for you to really find your inner truth. And that's the navigating of the dangerous situation.
Yeah.
That's the crossing the great river.
Hmm.
That's navigating the forest in the moonlight, when
Hmm.
you can't really see that well and you're not in complete control and you're literally going with the flow,
Hmm.
is to trust that your desire is going to put you in the right place, but trying to just fulfill your desire, especially around cultural norms, that's where the fire is going to burn you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where it's going to be consumptive. But some other names for 30 though is like it's like a clinging fire, but it's also like radiance. It's
Mm.
also clarity. So to bring your conscious awareness into these felt somatic places in our body is what is going to give us the clarity to reaffirm our yes, to reaffirm our commitment, to
Hmm.
affirm the buoyancy of our travel, like
Hmm.
through this experience and
Hmm.
eventually lead us to our rapture and devotion,
Hmm.
which is really beautiful because, again, like just as commitment and lightness are paired, like rapture and devotion. So it's like this idea that no, there shouldn't be suffering in your marriage. It
Hmm.
should be this like heart cracking open, like divine experience of being devoted that you see in each other, which is really the recognition of the divinity in you.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But again, like all these cultural interpretations, like really put these literal spells on the process.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like Richard talks about in the Jinky book, like these cycles of desire. Desire might bring you into a relationship, but the true cycle of desire maybe doesn't match the what like society says it should be.
Hmm.
So maybe that desire lasts one night, or maybe it lasts, half of a year, or maybe it lasts your whole lifetime. You don't know.
Yeah.
But when we're told that you need to get married and stay married for the rest of your life till death do you part, you know what I mean? That puts
Hmm.
a big story
Totally.
behind what
Totally.
our real commitment really is and what our true
Hmm.
desire cycle really is and why we were brought into proximity with another person or path. You know what I mean? And sometimes we need to be exposed to the frequency of the trauma or the adhesion that has bound up and obstructed our body. So only that frequency can penetrate deep enough to break it open so that we could bring the clarity of our conscious awareness into it.
Sorry, man. I think
That's okay.
are we still on live?
I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we're good.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
That was perfect. Yeah, some
Yeah,
technical difficulties today. We're just working it out.
yeah.
But that was amazing, man. And when you're talking about the till death do us part, I'm thinking about, what do you have on the other side of this equation? Okay, so there you have the fear mongering, like, oh, this is like, this like beast commitment is this like, you know, and it's ironic because there's true devotion is death, but
Yeah,
there's that sort of religious programming that's like till death, do us part,
right.
and that brings so much weight and gravity to the commitment. And then what do you have on the other side of the equation? You have the shadow of desire, and so
Right.
you have coming from the Catholic upbringing, the shaming of
Yeah.
desire.
Right.
Desire is bad, and you need to repent for your desires, right? And I think this is a good time to start talking a little bit more about rapture, because it, even looking at the trigrams where you've got for devotion the yin holding the yang, and it's kind of like the mystery of that abyss taking you wherever it's going to take you, versus with 30, with rapture, with the yang holding the yin, and desires come in out of nowhere, and it's funny. We were shopping yesterday, and here I see like a really incredible jacket that is is pricey, and so and it's like out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden
Right.
it's there to stay. It's there in your consciousness now. It's like, oh, now I didn't, before seeing that jacket, I didn't think about, oh, I want to go and buy a jacket. But now that that's there, now there's a part of me that was like, oh, should I get that jacket, and is thinking about it. And it's spoken about in the Gene Keys, where that desire, when we get battered around by it,
Hmm.
like yang, just like the fiery punches coming in out of
Right.
nowhere. And then it's like this wrestling of like really suppressing and being like, no, 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 I don't want to look at that. It's bad, especially desire many people associate with sex and intimacy and partners, and you're partnered with somebody, and then you see somebody on the street and you feel attraction for them, and then and then there's that like programming around suppressing that desire, like, no, that's bad, or no, I'm not going to look at that thing even though I want it. I'm not going to look at it because whatever reason. And then there's the other end of the spectrum, that is, I am just like a trash bag blowing in the wind, and I'm gonna just lean into every desire that comes across my plate, and get burned by that, by just kind of blindly following every single impulse that comes in.
Right.
And this one for me, especially being in my radiance and being so deeply connected to my well-being, I've once I started to connect with the word yearn, the yearning, and relating with that experience of the yearning, and making it deeply okay, and giving deep permission to myself to just connect with that sense of yearning, which is truly pure. I started to get transported more and more into this space of, like, your desire walks into your house, and you hold out the chair for them, and you pour them a cup of tea, and you don't know how
Right.
long they're going to stay for.
Right.
And you don't need to have them burn down your whole house, nor do you have to lock your door from them coming in, but you
Right.
welcome them in as a guest, and you hold them with lightness, you treat them with kindness, because it's that purity of that visitor coming in that has something, has gifts for you, has something
Yeah.
to reflect for you.
Right.
And it's the more that I brought it out of the mental space of like, what does this mean? Or where's that trying to
Yeah.
take me? Or
Right.
like, no, I don't want to look at that, or, whatever it is, into this space of, oh, can I just feel that pure yearning in my heart? And that's where that clinging fire started to make
Mhm.
more and more sense, where I'm like, wow, I actually feel that burning in my chest.
Yeah.
I feel
Right.
that like that burning, and this is where the yang kind of coming in, and then the yin allowing and opening to
Yeah.
receive that fire,
Right.
really, and in a way that is with this lightness, and
Yeah.
not grasping, not
Right.
closed off to it, but just receiving that fire to kind of dance around in
Yeah.
the way that it wants to, kind of like an actual fire dances around, the logs, and just let it like
Yeah.
lick,
Right. Yeah.
that inner space. And then at some point, it, with the canoe, it
Yeah.
travels
Right.
down the river, and then you
Lost
enter
itself.
into a
Yeah.
new space. And the
Right.
more that I have leaned into that, the more that I've felt this buoyancy that you're talking about,
Mhm.
this sense of this inner light emanating from me, and this deeper connection to joy in life.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
life is going to come, son of a bitch, life is going to come and just serve up something out of left field in front of me that's going to create this whole cocktail of temptation and just craving or whatever it is. And can I just come back into that space, just be like that, the pure life force energy? This is where I think somatically, it's such a powerful key to work with somatically,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
because desire has such a deep weight. And look at all in the Eastern traditions, it's like desire is the root of all suffering, right?
Right.
And so that in the Eastern tradition can create the whole block energy
Exactly.
around relating with desire too, where it's
Right.
like, this is so bad, this is
It's
the
bad.
antithesis,
Right.
the antithesis to my enlightenment.
Right.
And just letting it in,
Yeah.
and just, and then paring away all of the mental making meaning around, what does this have to be, who does that person have to become for me in my
Right.
life, what
Right.
is, where's that gonna, take me, do I need to, and just letting it be like, wow, I'm actually just feeling this pure burning sensation for what it is, because it truly is a burning sensation.
Oh, without a
and
doubt.
and let that cauldron just do its work.
Yeah. Uh,
And over time, I've felt that burning away that heaviness and
yeah.
bringing more of that energy in my life around being able to hold the door open like a revolving door with
Right.
lightness for whoever, or whatever wants to pop through. And then there you're dazzled more and more by life. And
Right.
look, if you go and sit out in the woods and you look at in the forest, and you've got, a hawk swoops down by you, and then you see a frog jumping next to you, and then a
Right.
river flowing by you. There's just that life is always sending these creatures, these signs, these visitors
Yeah.
through, and then they disappear.
Yeah.
And so, but that emotional, reckoning and attachment, and especially when it gets into the mind and the meaning making around what it has to be for us and where it has to take us. And again, oh, that I'm with someone, but now here's somebody else.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? And does that mean I need to like uproot my entire relationship and then go in this direction with this person? And then, oh, that's going to be so, heavy. I'm going to have to start over and all. And it's like, no, it may not be anything of that at all.
Right.
And you're actually getting in the way of the real alchemy that wants to happen by trying to pin it into this box. So like I keep on coming back to the image of like making fires in the winter, and it's like if you try to take the fire and smother it,
Yeah.
it doesn't, it
Goes
goes
out.
out, you know?
Yeah.
It needs to be allowed to move and
Yeah.
lick and wick in every way
And
that it needs to,
and have some freedom, have
and
that
have some
air.
freedom. Hmm. And
Yeah.
consume and
And
consume.
consent.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love your experience with the jacket. And for me it was like your desire. You saw the jacket and it sparked a desire in you
Hmm.
to put on that jacket. And if you just held your desire as equal to the externalization of this thing called a jacket. And so you just follow the desire and you try to
The clinging fire.
satisfy it. Yeah, so you put on the jacket
Right.
and and you feel good and it looks good, but maybe it doesn't look good in another situation. So now you think, oh, I need another jacket. And so
Hmm.
you keep on buying jackets and keep on buying jackets until literally your desire burns through all your resources.
Right. Yeah.
But for me, what I heard is that the desire that brought you to the jacket and the jacket to you, the deeper thread of that is that your own inner beauty wanted to be recognized. Your beauty as
Hmm.
a person, your dignity as a human being, of being adorned and being adorable, of being recognized in your own beauty. Like that it feels like the root of
Hmm.
what your heart is wanting. And so to be there and to put on the jacket and follow your desire into it and then really see yourself not wearing the jacket, but seeing your beauty that is coming out of you when you have this jacket
Hmm.
on. Then you don't need the jacket anymore. You don't
Right.
need any clothes anymore. You're just sitting there in that beauty, and then that's the rapture of you're
Hmm.
like, oh my God, like I'm enough, I'm worthy enough, I'm gorgeous, just the way that I am.
Hmm.
And that's your devotion, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
to yourself and to your space. And I think that's exactly right. It's like our desire to be with somebody else is this deeper reflection of us seeing our own beauty, our own worth, and our own value inside another
Reflected.
person being reflected back to us.
Hmm.
And sometimes we're in a relationship and our desire pulls us maybe towards another person. It's not necessarily to fill that desire with the other person, but to really check in and see, where am I not seeing myself
Hmm.
in my own life? Where am I not being seen in my own relationship? And can there be some amends and repair there? You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
And or maybe that cycle of desire has closed and it's time
Sure.
to
Yep.
make a change. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
and but that again, that is that commitment to your inner truth. And like you said, it's a somatic experience. It's really trusting your feeling. It's really trusting your body. And to be aware of, like, how is your body feeling when I'm approaching, my desire? So it's like
Hmm.
you could be buying a jacket and then feel all this guilt, in
Yeah.
your body about spending all this money. And then maybe you repress it and you say, fuck that, I'm gonna get 5 jackets, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Or you could be like, no, I don't spend money on jackets. I'm gonna mend my own jacket and and build it out of old tablecloths, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you have this raggedy old jacket. Either way, you know what I mean? You're not paying attention to where in your body is are you needing this frequency of beauty? You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like,
Yeah.
where is it?
Yeah.
And like, especially, yeah,
It,
it's
I love what you put about the whole like, and then you buy the jacket and then maybe you feel the guilt
yeah,
because even there is like you see with the desire and the half-heartedness.
yeah,
It's
right.
like and there's that whatever, like Buddhists saying, like when you're eating, just eat. Like
Mhm.
when you're walking, just walk,
Walk. Mhm.
and I come back to that again and again in the simplest of spaces, which for all of this, like I love the jacket example so much more than the job or where I live or the partner, because of course those are the big ones, but we even place so much more gravity on those experiences that can spin us out in how we want to establish our commitments. And there's so much just taboo and everything else that's
Right.
wrapped up in it, that these seemingly insignificant experiences of like a friend invites you to dinner, or I saw a jacket that I liked and I was thinking about whether or not I want to buy it. Those are the everyday seemingly inconsequential experiences, but that alchemy is right there present in that moment. And so you put on the jacket, you feel the feeling, and then there's those spaces where you buy the jacket, and then if you feel the guilt, then that's the half-heartedness. It's like half of you
Yeah.
bought the jacket and half of you didn't, and then you're battering with yourself around that until the next thing comes along and distracts you away from that and brings in another desire for you
Right.
to reckon with, and it kind of just
Right.
gets sent back into the chasm of the abyss of memory. And so it really welcomes that level of interaction and presence with everything in life. Like, oh,
Yeah.
if I'm gonna entertain this desire, I'm gonna buy this thing, I'm gonna buy it fully, and
Yeah.
I'm going to welcome it fully to become, part of my life for however long it wants to become a part of my life. And
Yeah.
the moment that I leave that store, like I'm fully committed to that choice that was made in that moment. And I'm
Right.
carrying that with me. But I'm also carrying that jacket with that touch of lightness,
Yeah.
where it's not the jacket that is fulfilling me. It
Right.
is the pure feeling that life has gifted, because that jacket just appeared out of
Right.
thin air, and you can go there a week later and something else is there that you wouldn't be attracted to at all. And so life has that mystical way of presenting these little gifts, but it's like, don't make the gift about the object. Don't make the
Right.
commitment about the object.
Right. Right.
Allow the pure space. Each of these are they're pure invitations for you to come back into
Mhm.
the sensory experience of
Exactly.
the rapture of being alive,
Right.
the rapture of living fully
Right.
devoted to the only place that exists, which is the present moment.
Right. And
And
and the present moment within this physical body. Like I
yes,
love what you were
yeah,
saying is like this, to be alive is to be physical, you know, and to have this physical vessel that we're navigating within. And it just makes so much sense, especially from like a male body, heteronormative, you know, tell or narrative is that you have this commitment, like to be a committed man, to be devoted. Like, what are you
mhm,
devoted to? And it's like if you take it deeper, you know, and you can say like, well, I'm committed, you know, to this planet. You know, I'm committed to life, or I'm committed to the moon. I'm committed to beauty, like the
mhm,
poet, you know, and the mystic.
mhm.
Or I'm committed to women. I'm here to
The
serve
muse,
the muse, or
yeah,
I'm committed to my woman. You know what I mean?
mhm,
And then it's like, no, I'm committed to actually my own feminine.
mhm,
I'm committed to my own inner knowing. I'm committed to my own felt experience.
mhm,
I'm committed to my truth. You know what I
mhm.
mean? And so just like as you get deeper and
It
more
brings, yeah,
concentrated into the abyss, it brings you deeper into your own center of
mhm,
what that knowing
mhm,
is.
yeah,
You know, and like water, the water in the five phase in expression in Chinese medicine, it resonates with fear, you know, and we kind of spoke about that a little bit. And
mhm,
then fire resonates with joy, but
mhm.
it's also the manic joy, the joy that makes your heart beat in your chest and it makes your mind just race a thousand
Like
miles.
excitement, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, mhm,
exactly. And that really to understand that many times our desire, or sometimes when it's out of balance, our mania, is all about bringing us face to face with our fears.
mhm,
Like that's a very important step of where our water body is being held, obstructed, or adhesed. We need to get into the fear that's at the core of that adhesion. And
mhm.
so our desires are actually going to be bringing us into situations in which we face that fear, which is why oftentimes you date an abuser if you've been abused as a kid, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Or
Mhm.
you come into a situation where you might even become the abuser, and you're coming up, your desires for relationship and intimacy and recognition and adoration is all bringing you into your deepest darkest fears, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And sometimes we repress those and we put those down and we try to create this false sense of confidence. But then life serves you up crisis, which is, you know, 28, you know, when the ridge pole breaks, you know what I mean? With like immortality, with like dealing with death, dealing with this possibility that we may not make it through this, you know.
Mhm.
Or life delivers you up a shock, which is actually thunder over thunder, which like zaps you out of your own, you know, facade and brings you to the moment, which is brings you to your truth.
Yeah.
And that we need to really trust those places, you know, like I'm speaking from experience, when your life crumbles around you, you know what I mean? And you're like, oh, woe is me, why did this happen? It's actually one of the most like ripe, fertile places for you to get deeply into your own felt carried expressions of fear and what you've been
Mhm.
repressing and your own half-heartedness, what you haven't been committed to, you know,
Yeah.
this whole time, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so to respect that fire and water of that, your desires aren't just bringing you towards your truth, but well, they're bringing you towards your truth, but they might have to break through this obstruction first,
Yeah.
which is rooted in fear.
Yeah.
And so to really trust, you know what I mean? And like, you know, though I walk through the valley of death,
Mhm.
I shall not fear
Yeah.
because thou art with me. And that thou is that rapture, is that faith in life, and that fire of the heart,
Mhm.
you know, being with you and carrying you into these dark, you know, abysmal,
Yeah.
dangerous, scary situations, you know?
I view um I view like the combination between rapture and devotion like walking along the ocean, the black ocean floor, literally set on fire.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like that energy that
Mhm.
you're surrounded by this like crushing abyss of water, yet you're just like walking with this like ignited by your own passion in your
Right.
joy and connection with life.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a hell of a journey to lean into that. And I find, you know, with all of these keys, all these hexagrams, they're powerful teachers for these in the positions that I have them in. They detail basically the cornerstone of my inner world.
Mm.
And that yearning, that wrestling with that experience around yearning and how I'm showing up to meet that yearning, and little by little moving away from the experience of like being burned by these experiences, but transforming that into being set on
Right.
fire by the
Yeah.
experience. You know, there's that key difference, like to
Yeah.
be burned by life versus being set on fire by life,
Exactly.
where
That's
it's like you've become that fire.
right. And that fire actually purifies. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then if you look at something that is being purified by fire in this true alchemical process, or how a metal is purified by being heated,
Walking
all
through the fire.
all the impurities are sloughing off until the very core of what is being heated up is
Hmm.
now ignited and is now like burning bright and holding its own inner glow. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I imagine that whatever traditions use fire walking as part
mhm.
of their, you know, initiatory journey
Right.
for individuals, that there's probably so many teachings like that. It's like
Yeah.
you need to become the fire, you know,
Oh, for sure.
and then you won't be burned. Become the fire and you won't be burned.
Yep.
Um,
And like I mean, almost every sexual relationship is like fire walking, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
And
exactly.
like we're literally walking over the coals with each other,
Yeah.
and how much disassociation happens in the average relationship. I mean, just speaking from my own history
Hmm.
of like moving into a script or a performance or a should be or an ought be, whether it's religious or social or cultural, or what your older brother was telling you what you needed to do, or expectations around being a man or being a woman, being a good girl, being innocent, like
Hmm.
virtuous, chaste, like all these things, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
But really, when you come into that fire of intimate union, you literally are walking over coals with another
Yeah.
person. You're
Yeah.
holding another person's heart, you're holding their body, and you're allowing them to do the same for you. Like that has such an incredible
Hmm.
piece of vulnerability. And you literally are going to be attracting people who need to crack open these places in you, both, somatically and metaphysically, in order to get into and through sometimes generations of stored trauma that you've been holding in your
Hmm.
body.
Hmm.
And you need to get through those pieces for you, until you can actually get centered in your own space, in order for you to actually be able to like hear your own inner truth. And I think that is what a devotion to a guru is all about, is that you are devoted to a certain path until it literally cracks you open and you realize, oh, no, I never needed, it's not the path.
Yeah.
It's the devotion to it, it's the devotion in and of itself is enough, because
Yeah.
ultimately I'm devoted to the divinity that lives in me. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And that whatever the object of your devotion is just holding space for you, is holding the mirror for you to
Mhm. Right.
witness
Exactly.
yourself. Yeah,
Right.
that's it. And yeah, yeah, I always find a real deep, like to go deeper into these keys with rapture and devotion. I think of like Rumi or like
Yeah.
any Sufi, you know,
Yeah.
mysticism, just
Oh
because
yeah.
there's so much passion, you know, and especially even it's interesting when I think about the you know, we've been talking about a lot of like fire and water, but I always think of the desert even,
Mhm.
and the desert is kind of like a fiery ocean, you know.
Oh yeah.
It's like basically it's what it is, and um and I feel into just the quality of like walking through the desert and being set ablaze by that experience of, where your mind starts to just disintegrate by, by the heat and moving through this space, and this like grand abyss
Yeah.
of the heat. And I think this is why the Sufis, and just where they originated from, had such a deep connection to these archetypes of devotion and
Yeah.
rapture, and their poeticism, and just that
Yeah.
like blazing passion to
Yeah.
just drink life and taste
Yeah.
life. It came from,
Yeah.
because of exactly what we're talking about, with that representation of the abyss, that representation of the fire,
Yeah.
and walking kind of this long abysmal path through the fire,
Right.
and
Yeah.
treading lightly through it,
Exactly.
and it's like, you think about stepping on the sand, and just a few steps later the wind blows and your footstep is
You're
erased,
gone.
and
Right.
there's your lightness. Be as
Right.
light as that sand, and let
Yeah.
it carry you, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, it's so good.
yeah.
So many images were coming up for me when you were
Mhm.
saying that. Like, if you're in that abyss of like fiery desert, like what starts to happen, you start seeing mirages.
Right.
And like literally when you're in the desert, or like even on an airport, with the tarmac, you can see the water coming up, you can
Hmm.
see the evaporation. And so how the fire and water is always together, and then to be in the heat, but then to find the oasis, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah. Hmm.
To find the thing, like, so that marriage of yin and yang, masculine and feminine, light and dark, hot and cold, like how important it is to always, that you can never just have one without
Hmm.
the other, you know what
Hmm.
I mean?
I
And
think I think that
that,
that's I think that that's the pairing to what you're talking about with the ocean, and
yeah,
at the depth of the ocean you
yeah,
find the thermal vent, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
that's your devotion, and then
right. In the
in the
desert,
desert that's your rapture, because
yeah,
in finding
yeah.
the oasis,
On Oasis,
and yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And have you seen the pictures of like desert, like the Saudi Arabian desert, or just pure sand desert, where if you look at certain dunes, they start to take on like the feminine form,
yeah. Hmm.
like a female, belly, or
Hmm.
maybe thigh and buttock.
Hmm.
And so it's just again like this expression of the physicality of how important that feminine embodied experience is.
Hmm.
And if you look at the Tarot, the high priestess, she's holding the book of wisdom. And so this whole process is to have this desire of what could be, and allow you that to lead you into this experience, into this embodied experience of what actually is. And then that gets translated and written down in the book of
Hmm.
wisdom. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Hmm.
Which is the embodied experience of living.
Hmm.
And sometimes we really need to bump into a whole bunches of no's until we find our full bodied yes.
Hmm.
And then that yes is our embodied experience. And that is like our soma resonating at a certain frequency that is actually holding our shape. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
And when that shape is as aligned and centered as it can be, that is more and more expressing your highest truth.
Hmm. I think of Paulo Coelho's The
Yeah.
Alchemist as another perfect
My my
tale
my
for this.
my son is reading that book right
Oh,
now.
amazing. It's a
It's so
perfect book for
awesome.
him to read.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so great. Yeah. Well, man, we're
Yeah.
over the hour,
Okay.
and this was incredible,
Yeah.
to say the least. And
I
it's
love
funny because this is the first, but it doesn't feel like the first, because we've been doing this for weeks and
it. Right.
months. And yeah, so thanks everybody who's
Yeah.
watched. This is an amazing first inaugural journey of turning
Yeah.
the key, and we'll be back again next week with whatever else we're going to talk about. Maybe another
Right.
pair. Maybe we go deeper into this one. But
Exactly.
um,
And for people watching too, if there's any technical things that we didn't catch as far as volume or echo or video, drop a comment about how we can improve the
yeah,
actual experience of it.
yeah, amen.
Yeah.
All
All right,
right. Well,
brother.
signing off, and yeah, until next time.
Yeah.
Thanks
Until
everybody.
next time. Thank you.